Welcome to episode 7 of Lizzie's Bedtime Stories. I am welcoming back Clifford Henderson, and she's my storyteller for this episode. So welcome back, Cliffy.
Hey, thanks, Liz. It's delightful to be here.
I'm so excited. I've had you on a couple of times, and I'm like, it's always a good day when I see you on my schedule.
Oh, thank you. Well, I feel the same way.
I was just like, oh, Cliffy's on my schedule.
Yeah, warm and fuzzy together. It's good.
Yes, so much fun. So this Lizzie's bedtime story is one of my favorite endeavors for the show because I get to play the role of fan more than as host because I get to sit back and relax and listen to somebody read to me like I'm a little girl.
Which is such a great thing. My partner and I just went on a vacation and we spent much of the time reading back and forth to each other. And I just think I love reading out loud and I love being read to. So I think this is a great idea you've come up with because to me, having somebody read you a story is the best.
So you're going to be reading to me. I get to play a little kid. And can you tell me a little bit about your story?
Well, it's a romance, which for me is unusual because it's not I often throw romance into my novels, but they are not typically romance novels. You know, they don't have that formula. So this was a new experience and one that I really challenged myself with because my editor, Bold Strokes Books, said, hey, we're doing this anthology. Anybody want to put short stories in? And I thought, I should try writing a little short story romance. So it was really fun for me. It was really a new challenge, and I got to write about some things I care about. So, yeah, it was fun.
So, tell me, because I'm always curious about the craft of writing. Since you don't know, you do have, I really loved Out in the Middle of Nowhere, and it had romantic elements to it, but it was not a romantic. I don't know. In my head, it was a romance. I know that wasn't the...
Okay, so it's actually called The Middle of Somewhere.
Somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay. And yes, here's one of the reasons that it wasn't a romance, probably the main reason, is at the very end, Edie leaves. And a classic romance, the two players, the two lovers stay together at the end, and it's happily ever after. And with Edie, I left it a little bit open that I think the reader assumed they would come back together, but the biggest love story in that was her learning to love herself.
I agree, because I didn't see it this way because I'm a romantic person. Not romantic person, but I love romance. I'm really big into people falling in love. And I remember when I was reading that story, I really liked that finally that she was interested in a good woman.
Yes. That
was not like her beauteous car that's crap on the inside,
Right, exactly.
Though her externals was pretty darn rad, this retro look, and she's so smart, and, great with kids, and, they were great communing together, and, I liked it. And so for me, it was a romance, and an important one, because instead of ending in couplehood, she, they know that they like each other, but she decided to kind of go for what she's wanted and her goal, which was to go to the women's festival.
Right.
Instead of just casting aside her goal to be with the person that she's interested in.
Right, which we know is her history.
It is. So
she always throws her life aside for other women. And in this time she says, I'm going to keep what's important to me and hopefully be able to build a relationship from there.
Yeah, and you know what? She didn't, it's been too long since I read it. I don't remember the names in my head. What were the two names?
Edie and Cadence are the two romantic.
Edie and Cadence.
Mm-hmm.
And so my thought, wasn't it her, I'm twisting myself in circles, but it wasn't on her own steam, Is Cadence the name of the main character?
Cadence is the one she falls in love
Okay.
with. Edie is the one traveling.
Okay, so Cadence kind of encouraged her to, stick with her goals, which I thought was the best way to be an awesome girlfriend.
I agree, but we know that that's not always the case in romantic relationships.
Well, no, it isn't. And, one of the things that, I don't know if it's silly to strive for realism in a fictional novel, but I like real endings. Not that I don't love finally we get together and we're madly in love and we become a couple and everything's like, the angels sing, But I was like, wow, that's love because, because she, instead of losing herself, even though she'd be losing herself in a better woman, she's not losing herself.
Right.
She's finally on the right track, and she will return after her little, go away to the Michigan's Women's Festival and come back. Because she's going to come back.
She is, yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I dug it. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, that's really why it's not a romance. That's really why it's not classified as a romance. Because a romance is happily ever after, And I did leave a little bit of doubt there, that, maybe she goes to the festival and maybe something else happens for her, you don't know. So.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say I dug that. So, yay. So when you set out to do a challenge for yourself, which is to write this short story, how did your gears change, or like how did you approach it, or going into creating something that's a little outside of your norm?
Well, I always look at a book for the through line of the main character, of my protagonist or protagonists, of what emotional journey do they have to undergo. And in this one, it's learning to find true love. In a short story, the through line really is always going to be love. It's going to be feeling unloved at the beginning, or being in a bad relationship at the beginning, or, whatever. And then at the end, having love be the happy ending, and finding love. So it was very clear that that's where it needed to go. And for me, I chose to start with somebody who was feeling very unloved, and to experience what it feels like to then have somebody see you. Because I think ultimately, when you feel really loved, you feel that the person really sees you.
Yes.
And that is a remarkable feeling, to be seen fully by somebody. And so that was sort of my journey, to take somebody from not feeling that to having the experience of having somebody really see them. So, yeah.
Yes. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah. I'm glad you did too. It made me think about it.
Yeah, no, and the reason why I mentioned it is because I've written different types of stories, and I remember the one story that is actually out in the universe was inspired by a bar rag for the cocktail hour, and I had a goal in it because it was pestering me. The story was pestering me, and I couldn't leave it be, so I had to sit down. And also I had one of the other hosts, Sherry, has a preference for certain stuff, and since I was writing it for the show, I kept both hosts in mind when I did it. So, that kind of was my. If I'm the train, that was my train tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad I asked about it. So now that you've set it up so wonderfully, I'm very curious and ready to listen to you read this special story.
Great. All right. Well, I will do it then. It's called Boiled Peas. Penny's heart had been trampled so many times, she often thought of it as raw hamburger, or an overripe persimmon pecked to death by birds and then dropped splat from a tree. True, she was overly sensitive, or that's what her mom always said when she came to visit, which she just had, and although her mom lived 4,915 miles away, her words had a way of sticking around after she left. They'd wrap around Penny like an itchy blanket. You ask too much, want too much. Quit looking for the pea, princess. The pea line was her mom's favorite. Penny ripped open the bag of frozen Safeway peas and let them tumble into the boiling water. It was her 24th birthday, and she was celebrating with a bottle of Veuve Clicquot and boiled peas. She wanted to accept her fate, swallow it down, the too picky princess who could never be satisfied. Her cat, Screech, looked up from his nest of pillows on the couch. He was always interested when she was in the kitchen. "Believe me, you wouldn't like this," Penny said to him, then went back to studying the dancing peas as if they were tea leaves. It was silly, really, to be obsessing over her mother's words this way. She was 24 now and had a good job as an intern at the Natural History Museum. So why couldn't she be more confident? Like her friend Kai. Kai was a sculptor who taught yoga at a local spa to pay the bills and didn't even want to fall in love. "Why would I want someone to muck up my perfect life?" she'd said to Penny just the other day. But it was different for Kai. Kai enjoyed one-night lovers. Penny broke up a clump of frozen peas with a spoon while picturing Kai and someone equally flexible contorting themselves into Kama Sutra-like poses, and thought to herself, "I could never do that with someone I just met." It took Penny time to trust a person. She needed to feel loved. She popped the cork on her bottle of Veuve Clicquot and held it over the sink to keep the froth from getting on the floor. What a waste, she thought as she licked the expensive champagne from her fingers. She'd given up a haircut to afford it. Pouring the champagne into one of a pair of etched champagne glasses she'd given as a Valentine gift to Phoenix, her last and longest love, she thought how sure she'd been that Phoenix and she would be forever. They'd even moved in together. Then Phoenix's mentally unbalanced brother showed up, and Phoenix told him he could stay until he worked something else out. It was pleasant at first. The three of them would have dinner together, and once they'd all gone to bed, she and Phoenix would talk about how well he seemed to be doing. Then he began to leave raw eggs in the pockets of Penny's jackets. She'd reach in and her fingers would be covered in slime. She asked Phoenix if maybe this wasn't a bad sign, but all Phoenix says was she talked to him. When he locked himself out and smashed the plate glass window to gain entry, Penny was almost relieved. Surely now Phoenix would have to ask him to leave. But Phoenix hadn't seen it that way. He was locked out, Penny. What was he supposed to do? "I'll talk to his doctor about adjusting his medication." "But if he doesn't take his medication, which he doesn't, what difference will it make?" "Give him a chance," Phoenix yelled back. And so Penny had, until he came brandishing the sewing scissors at the two of them, at which point Phoenix finally admitted his being around was a problem, but by then it was too late. Penny's trust was gone. Before that, there was her second longest relationship, Mandy, who insisted her Great Dane sleep with them, even though the flea-infested giant kept pushing Penny out of the bed. Maybe she did ask too much. She dipped a spoon into the pot of peas, scooped one out, blew on it, almost placed it on her tongue, then let it plop back into the boiling water. She planned to eat a whole bowlful, every last one. Even if she did despise peas, she needed to accept the truth about herself. She'd never be truly happy. Never. She took a sip of Veuve Clicquot to wash the pea flavor from her mouth. Happy birthday to me. There was a knock at the door. She glanced at the clock. No one ever dropped by unannounced. The only apartment she'd been able to afford was too far away from the rest of her friends. She tucked her pink fluffy robe around her and cinched it so it wouldn't accidentally slip open, and went to peer out the peephole. Screech, who'd also been startled by the knock, glared at the door as if by sheer will he could make it go transparent and see through it to the other side. The back of someone's head was all Penny could see. Someone who had a lovely long braid. No, two braids, one right on top of the other. Penny set the chain and cracked open the door. "Can I help you?" The someone with the long black braids turned around, revealing a sassy-looking dyke wearing a low-slung tool belt weighted down by hammer, tape measure, a few screwdrivers, and a bunch of other tools. In her hand was a toolbox decorated with vintage decals. She was tanned with lean muscles, and her mouth tipped up to one side. Her T-shirt said, "Girl Scout gone bad." "Sorry it's so late, but you contacted management about a flickering light?" Which Penny had, almost 2 weeks ago. She scrutinized the woman. How old was she? Penny decided they were about the same age. Yes, I did. I most certainly did. And you're the new woman they told us about? I guess you could call me that, although I'd prefer if you called me Lil. I hope it's okay I just came over without you returning my call. You called? Yeah. Penny glanced at her machine. Sure enough, it was blinking. I must have been in the shower. If it's more convenient for me to come back. No, this is fine. Again, sorry about being so late, but Mrs. Dunbar's drain in 6B was clogged. Apparently she washes her Pomeranian in the sink. There was a pause in the conversation, and Penny realized they were still standing on opposite sides of the door with a chain lock between them. I guess I should let you in then. Only if it's convenient. Like I said in my message, I've got a slot on Thursday I could plug you into. Oh, please, you're here. Why don't you just plug me now? Plug me in. Blood flooded Penny's cheeks. I can't believe I just said that. I meant you're here. You might as well get on with it. Fix the light. Lil smiled, her leprechaun green eyes flashing mischief, but Penny refused to be moved. She was not about to get sucked into another disappointment. No way. My name's Penny. So what you say you let me in then, Penny? Penny thought for a moment, then unlatched the lock. She did need her light fixed. As she opened the door, she became ultra-aware of how she must appear. It was Friday night, and here she was hanging around her apartment in her robe and holding a glass of champagne. Her hair was a mess. It's my birthday, and I was kind of celebrating. Lil looked past her. By yourself? Penny nodded towards Screech, who was cleaning his butt. He may not look like it now, but he's quite the party animal. Lil set her toolbox on the floor and crouched down to massage Screech's chin. Hey, bud, you gonna help Miss Penny celebrate? Screech rubbed up against her hand. He's a real lover. Surprised to see her usually suspicious cat taking to Lil so easily, Penny said, Yes, he is. After one final stroke down Screech's back, Lil stood. So why don't you show me that light? Oh, right, it's in the bedroom. As Penny led Lil down the hall to the bedroom, she couldn't stop jabbering. It's not that big of a thing, really. It still turns on, but about a month ago, it just started sort of strobing. She stepped into the bedroom and switched on the flickering light. Lil placed her toolbox on the floor and looked up at the light. I can't believe it took you 2 weeks to call. This would annoy the hell out of me. Well, I just had a problem with my dishwasher leaking, so it felt funny to call again in the same month. Lil flicked the switch on, then off, then on again. No one should have to put up with a light like this. Penny, suddenly overly warm and horribly self-conscious, blurted, especially an epileptic, and then to her horror began laughing so hard she snorted. Lil looked away from the light fixture. Hey, are you all right? You seem kind of keyed up. I'm fine, Penny said, pinching the top of her nose to regain composure. I think it's this birthday thing. It's got me kind of, emotional. Lil sat on the edge of the bed and began unlacing her boots. So, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Why was this complete stranger taking off her boots on her bed? Then Penny realized Lil didn't want to get the bed dirty when she stood on it. 24, she said, admiring the cleanliness of Lil's socks. Lil unscrewed the bulb. Do you have a new one we could try? In the hall closet, Penny said, and went to retrieve it. She couldn't stop thinking how considerate it was that Lil had taken off her boots to stand on the bed. Considerate and oddly intimate. Here's the new bulb. Lil screwed it in. The flicker was still there. I'm going to need to turn off your breaker. It's in the closet, I know. It's the same for all the apartments. It was right then that Penny smelled the peas. Crap! What? My peas are probably dead by now. Your peas? Long story, Penny said as she bolted for the kitchen. The water was all gone and it stank. She turned off the phone and poked at the bloated peas on top. Those underneath were black. She sighed. Of course she'd still eat them, or at least skim off a few from the top. She had to, because while princesses in fairy tales always got their wish and lived happily ever after, those in real life were invariably disappointed, and tonight was about accepting that, fully. It's about to go dark, Lil called from the hall. Same breaker for the bedroom and the living room. Do you need me to hold a flashlight for you? No, I got a headlamp. You just sit back and enjoy your birthday. Penny took the pot of peas and bottle of champagne into the living room. She lit a candle. Screech stepped lightly onto her lap. She scratched behind his ear. Thanks for coming to my party. The sound of Lil futzing around in the bedroom made her feel secure. She'd always liked people who could fix things. She drained her glass and poured another, then another. There was no use rushing this concession to her mother. She had all night, and the peas weren't going anywhere. She peered into the pot, scooped out a spoonful of green mush, and sniffed it. A girl like her would never be satisfied. Her mother was right. She asked too much, was too sensitive. She held the spoonful to her mouth, might as well shut her eyes, and prepared to shove the spoonful of disgusting peas into her mouth. Just wanted to let you know I'm about to turn the breakers back on. Penny opened her eyes and was dazzled by the spotlight of Lil's headlamp. She blinked a couple of times, the spoon suspended in front of her mouth. If you don't mind me asking, what are you doing? Lil asked. Me? Lil looked over her shoulder. Is there anyone else here I should know about? Penny let the spoon drop into the pot and blinked back tears. She was buzzed, no two ways about it. Nothing, I was just about to eat my fate. Is that what's so stinky? You've no idea, Penny said. Then something about being in the spotlight while seriously smashed on champagne uncorked Penny's bottled-up fears, and before she knew it, she was spilling out all over the place, telling Lil about never being able to be happy, and the raw eggs, and snoring dog, and her mother insisting that she was just like a princess who could feel a pea under 20 mattresses and 20 feather beds. Lil, who flicked off her headlight and settled in on the floor across from Penny, just listened, the candlelight casting lovely shadows on her face. When Penny finally ran out of steam, Lil said, I think you're giving peas a bad rap. Penny was indignant. Was that all Lil had gotten from what she'd said? I don't see what that's got to do with... Lil raised a hand to shush Penny. Could I take you somewhere tomorrow, if you're free, that is? I want to show you something. And then, if you still want to eat your gross peas, well, fine, eat your gross peas. But I really think you should see it before you go on with this. Penny peered into the pot. The peas looked even more revolting now that she'd scooped into them. And tomorrow was her day off. Okay, I guess. I have to work in the morning, but I could swing by at about 1. Penny tucked a blonde curl behind her ear. Should she be making this kind of commitment when she was on champagne? Sure, she said, not at all sure that she was. Lil stood. Good. I'm going to turn the breakers back on. A yawn slipped from Penny's mouth. She tried to disguise it with a smile. There was no way she wanted Lil to think the yawn had to do with their date. Or was it a date? Her brain was so muddled from the champagne she really had no idea, but she knew she had to say something. You fixed it? Won't know until the breaker's back on, but I found some loose wires. If this doesn't work, I'll come back tomorrow to check the switch. You want me to turn off the switch so you're not blasted by light when they come back on? Another yawn threatened to slip out, but Penny held this one back. That would be nice. Once Lil was out of the room, Penny stretched out on the couch next to a purring Screech. His soft rumble made her eyelids heavy. She let them close. Once again, she felt comforted by the sound of Lil in the bedroom. She moved with such confidence, such self-assurance. Penny pulled the throw blanket from the back of the couch and tucked it in around herself and Screech. What was she doing making a date with someone she just met? Again, she wondered if it actually was a date. Maybe Lil just felt sorry for her. That seemed more likely. Who'd want to make a date with a sloshed crybaby obsessed with peas? She woke briefly when Lil blew out her candle and slipped out of the apartment, clicking the door softly behind her. At some point in the night, Penny made her way to the bedroom where she slept uninterrupted until noon. She awoke feeling refreshed and excited and a bit nervous about her date. Once out of bed, she checked the light. Sure enough, the flicker was gone. She made her way to the kitchen where Screech rubbed up against her legs as if she might forget to feed him. Okay, hold your horses. As she reached for the cat food, she noticed a note on her counter weighted down by the pot of peas. Miss Penny, if you've changed your mind about today, call me, 335-3700. Otherwise, I'll see you at 1. Lil. She smiled. No one had ever called her Miss Penny before. As a reminder not to get her hopes up, she dumped the loose peas into the garbage disposal, then filled the pot with water to soak the rest of them out. You barely know her, she thought. At 1 sharp, there was a knock at the door. Penny glanced in the mirror. She'd been unsure how to dress, so had chosen casual jeans, her favorite tank top that showed just a strip of her midriff, and sandals. She was glad for her choice when she opened the door. Lil was wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and work boots. You still up for this? Lil asked. Penny picked up her purse. If you promise it'll keep me from eating those gross peas. Lil laughed. I can't promise, but I have a hunch. As they walked down the stairwell, Penny couldn't help but feel sheepish about the night before. Thanks for fixing my light. No need to thank me, Lil said. It's my job. Besides, it was my pleasure. She unlocked the passenger side of an old pickup. And this is my chariot. Penny slipped in. The interior was spotless and smelled as if it had been recently wiped down with something slightly citrus. Nice, she said when Lil came around the other side. Thanks. She might not be fancy, but she's paid for. With that, Lil turned the key in the ignition and pulled into the light Saturday stream of traffic. A wave of panic passed through Penny. She barely knew this woman, and now here she was in a truck with her going to God knew where. She tried to think of something to say. So, what was wrong with the light was all she could come up with. The usual, a few loose wires were loose. It can happen over time. Especially when you have a guy upstairs who jumps rope. In his apartment? Monday through Friday, 6 a.m., right above my head. You shouldn't have to put up with that. What choice do I have? He pays his rent just like I do. As Lil seemed to be mulling this over, Penny sat back, trying to appear casual and observed her driving. Lil moved through the traffic with confidence, like she belonged on the road, and she stopped for pedestrians. This was something Penny appreciated, as she herself did not have a car, so was often walking. And yet there was something about Lil's confidence that also frightened Penny. Where was she taking her? Just as she was about to ask, Lil said, I'm going to talk to Mr. Baratelli. The landlord? Yep, he and I have a pretty good rapport. I'll let him know that the reason your light fixture needed work was because of unnecessary physical activity upstairs. You don't need to do that. I want to. I hate the thought. Lil slammed on the brakes to keep from hitting a blue Mazda that ran a stop sign. Her arm instinctively reached across to protect Penny. You okay? Shaken, Penny said, fine. When Lil removed her arm, an unexpected longing passed through Penny. My dad used to do that, she said. He didn't want anything to happen to his precious cargo. I don't know about precious. Lil glanced at her briefly before returning her attention to the sudden cluster of traffic. I do. Penny looked out the window and said, thank you, very softly. Who was this Lil, and why was Penny still apprehensive? A few minutes later, they pulled up to a row of Victorians that had been split into apartments. Mine's the blue and gray one, Lil said. I'd invite you in, but one of my roommates is down with the flu. No need exposing you to that. Penny cocked an eyebrow. So why did we come here? Lil smiled. You'll see. Now follow me. And before Penny knew it, Lil was out of the truck and making her way down a small, dark walkway between two Victorians. Penny hopped out of the truck and trotted behind. What was this girl up to? The walkway opened up onto a large community garden. Lil stepped to the side of the entrance, made of marvelously twisted wood, bent slightly at the waist, and swept her arm wide. After you. Penny, acting all serious, pretended to lift a heavy ankle-length skirt, tilted her chin toward the sky, and stepped through the arbor, then stopped dead in her tracks. The garden was stunning. Rows of raised beds, each meticulously kept up, filled the quarter-acre plot. And there were little sculpted sitting areas here and there, and wind chimes. Penny walked over to a bed lined with luscious green. Is this butter lettuce? The best in the world, Lil grinned, and completely organic. She broke off an outside leaf. Want a taste? Penny opened her mouth, and Lil tucked the crisp leaf between her lips. The back of her hand gently brushed the side of Penny's cheek. Was that on purpose, Penny wondered? A slight shiver passed down her spine as, with great care, she closed her mouth around the lettuce leaf. It would be the freshest thing she had ever eaten, and she wanted to savor it. Oh my God, it's so buttery. It is. Store-bought never tastes like that. Taste this, Lil said, ripping off a dark green leaf from another plant. An impossibly sweet burst exploded in Penny's mouth. What is that? Italian parsley. Parsley? I thought parsley was just something you got on the side of your plate at a restaurant. Lil popped a sprig into her own mouth. I use it for breath freshener. Then she walked over to a raised bed full of beets and carrots. Soon we'll be putting in the summer stuff, tomatoes, squash, eggplant. Who's we? Penny asked, suddenly praying it wasn't a girlfriend. Our collective, but I'm one of the main ones. I work out here almost every day. Penny watched as Lil tenderly inspected the underside of a broccoli leaf. I had no idea broccoli grew like that, she admitted. Isn't it beautiful? The heads are actually flowers. The thought of eating flowers delighted Penny. She brought her nose to the broccoli head and inhaled. It didn't smell like a flower, but had a rich, musky scent. Yum. I'll make you up a bag of produce before you go, Lil said, taking Penny's hand. But now, let me show you why I brought you here. Penny let herself be led to the back of the garden, loving the feel of her hand and Lil's. They fit so perfectly, Lil's larger, stronger hand wrapping around her smaller, soft one. Thank you for blowing out my candle last night. Lil gave her hand a squeeze. Seemed like you were having a pretty rough night. They rounded a tall trellis covered in climbing green vines. Voila, Lil said, my pride and joy. Penny laughed. The vines were covered in pea pods, of course. She stepped in for a closer look and noticed thread-like tendrils reaching out from the vines to curl around the slender bamboo rods of the trellis. Along with the pea pods, each vine was sprinkled with the most delicate white flowers. Apparently, peas started out their lives as flowers. Now, these are birthday peas, Lil said. Go ahead, pick as many as you want. Penny glanced at Lil, her grip on Lil's hand involuntarily tightening. You expect me to eat these? Why not? You were going to eat those crappy burned ones last night. But they're not cooked. Don't tell me you've never had fresh peas off the vine. Embarrassed, Penny shook her head. Until last night, she generally avoided peas altogether. Lil let go of her hand and plucked a pod off the vine. Promised to keep an open mind? Penny nodded. What choice did she have? This woman, who she was finding herself more and more attracted to, was offering up what she called her pride and joy. Lil slid her finger down the seam of the slender pod and cracked it open, revealing 6 perfectly round peas. Take one, she said as she stepped in close enough for Penny to smell her clean, parsley-scented breath. Much as Penny was excited by the sudden intimacy and Lil's obvious delight in the peas, she couldn't help noticing a mild nausea heating up in her belly. What am I doing? I hate peas. But she couldn't refuse, not after all the trouble Lil had gone to. So she braced herself for yet another disappointment and said, "Okay, I'll try." She chose the plumpest one right in the center and tugged it lightly. The round orb popped out easily. Now she'd have to eat it, or at least put it in her mouth. Lil's hopeful gaze was giving her no choice. She slipped the pea between her lips. The small, hard ball rested on her tongue, so innocent, so devoid of expectation. She rolled it around in her mouth and a couple of times, testing, then, without another thought, bit down. "You like it?" Lil asked. Penny thought for a moment, and to her surprise, found she wasn't the least bit repulsed. It was sweet, fresh, nothing like the bland peas of her childhood. She took the whole pod from Lil and, using her tongue, flicked the rest of the peas into her mouth. Lil laughed. "I guess the answer is yes." Penny wanted to say the answer was more than yes, and that this was the best birthday present she'd ever received in her whole life, even if it was a day late. But before she could put this thought to words, Lil pulled another pod from the vine, popped it open, and let the peas tumble into her palm. Only this time, instead of offering them up for eating, she just let them rest here. It just blows my mind that inside each of these peas is the beginning of a whole plant. "Kind of like people," Penny said softly. "Each one of us is full of so many things that nobody knows about, like you with this garden." Lil picked up a pea and pressed it to Penny's lips. "I'd like to know more about you if you'd let me." Penny let her lips curl around Lil's fingertip and linger for a moment, then took the pea into her mouth and circled it with her tongue before biting down and swallowing. "I should tell you, I'm not always easy. I can be kind of like a princess, you told me. But from what I've seen, you're the real thing." An icy wall inside Penny began to melt, releasing a single tear. She brushed it back. Lil let the peas in her hand drop into the rich soil, then rested both hands on Penny's shoulders. "What's more, I think real princesses deserve to live happily ever after." The warmth of Lil's hands made Penny's knees go weak. "I'd kind of given up on that whole notion." Lil cocked her head. "You'd given up on peas, too. So what do you say we give this princess thing one more try?" End of story.
Oh my God, you almost made me cry.
I almost started crying myself when I was reading it. That's the worst thing. I was tearing up, and I had to just keep reading through my tears. Now they're coming down a little bit.
I was like, that was beautiful. Oh my God.
I hate that when that happens, but sometimes it does.
I'm such a girl. I'm like, that's beautiful.
Oh no, those two girls. True love.
There we go. See?
I know. You get to be a princess and have happily ever after.
Oh my Lord, it was perfect. It was perfect. What a great metaphor.
Yeah, well, those peas do a lot of work in the story, don't they?
Oh my goodness, yes they do. And I love that she's got a cat named Screech. As I wipe the tears off my lashes, I'm like, that was great.
Oh, good.
I love
it was nice. I haven't revisited that story in a while, so it was nice to reread it. Thank you.
You're welcome. That was amazing. And I know that our listeners are going to join us in for that little hopeless romantic happily ever after.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
That was great pacing, too. And the one of the challenges, if you have short fiction, is to have a believable plot and character arc in that time.
Yes.
And so I was pondering her in the kitchen while she was cooking. I'm like, how on earth is she going to have enough time to fall in love in this story?
Yeah, well, yeah, it just sometimes happens like that, though, too. It can happen fast.
And it was tricky because I'm like, first she's talking about her friends who can get busy on a one-night stand. Then, like porn plot number 1. Sexy handyman shows up at your door while you're in it.
And that was kind of funny when I thought that, because I thought it is porn plot number 1. And I thought, well, I'm going to go with it and do something different with it. Yeah.
Because I was just like,
It's a little tender story instead.
You know what? And that's the beauty of being a listener. Like, I love being a reader too, but being a listener is kind of on a different level, because it takes you back to that time when you were younger, when people would tell you stories. And I'm like, I was listening to you, and like, my brain's all like happy listening to how things are toing and froing, and I love the language, which I always do with you. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is what everyone wants. This is totally romance plot number 4. Lonely girl in her apartment on her birthday, you know, having a horrible day. Hot person comes in, fixes something.
I know, fixes something, hello, with tools.
Ding,
Yay.
ding, ding. But what I really thought was neat is that it wasn't so much her bulging muscles and her nice tight ass. It was more like, it was very comforting to hear her moving around in my bedroom.
Yeah. I know for me with romance, I know some people really love the bulging abs and stuff, but for me that is rarely what makes me love somebody. Mm-hmm. There's this other feeling that has to come with it, you know, that's this just tenderness. And I think that was the thing about Lil, that she was just really a very kind and capable woman. Mm-hmm. Who was clearly going to treat Penny well.
And I liked working within the construct of that P.
Yeah.
And basically, you know, because the P had the legs in the story, I think.
Uh-huh.
And so what she probably didn't realize is that she was kind of settling for her mom's skewed version of herself, and eating the disgusting burnt peas was a punishment for wanting more out of life, and, you know, like her get real moment. And then she gets an alternative to the get real moment in a beautiful garden where it's not just like flowers, it's food, it's nourishment, like nourishment for your heart and soul. That was great.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm a gardener too, so I have my own little pride and joy peas, so.
I could see like the tendrils, and I loved, what I also enjoyed was having a different perspective on vegetables. Uh-huh. You know, that they can be, you know, buttery or sweet or flowering or whimsical, like all these different things where, you know, usually when you think of vegetables, you think of, you know, nutrition and whatnot. But you really went with the metaphor, you know, and did it come naturally for you, or did you ponder it, or like, how did things flow?
As I said, I'm a gardener, so I have this relationship with my plants. I mean, I love them, and what I love about them is when I'm working in my garden, it is such a sensual time, because you have the smells, you have this rich earth, this water, you know, it's and the plants are so beautiful. When you actually see broccoli growing, it's just so stunningly beautiful. All of them are. And so I think that came pretty naturally to me. I don't know where I came up. I'm sure, actually, I think when I was thinking about this story, I was thinking about a fairy tale, writing an adult fairy tale. Mm-hmm. And then I was going off of Princess and the Pea. And so then I kind of built the arc out of that, of, you know, this whole Princess and the Pea, and our idea of these princesses that are so picky and you know, but saying, I know that I have in my, I used to worry that I wanted too much from life and expected too much, and had that labeled on me a little bit, and then to find out that no, I don't really expect too much. You know, when I finally found love, it really was everything that I wanted, and it wasn't too much to ask. That I wanted true love, and I got to get true love. So I like to believe everybody can get true love.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you get to see, in the same way that Lil saw her from the outside, you get to see, you're not being too picky. Your ex-girlfriend was having really unrealistic expectations of you, and it's almost like she was being forced, just like she was going to force herself to eat the peas, she was being forced to accept other people's judgment as to what's appropriate and what's okay. And first, I feel like wringing her mother's neck. I'm like, how could you want so little for your child, that knowing what they've gone through,
Yeah, well, clearly the mother didn't expect much for herself probably either, and had settled for less,
Because she doesn't sound fussy or picky to me.
No, I don't think she is. And I think that when Lil says, gosh, how could you have lived with that light bulb for so long that way? And why, that guy's, he's, exercising above you. Why are you putting up with that? That we all of a sudden see through Lil that Penny really isn't that. It's just what she's come to believe about herself.
Yeah, and a lot of times as women, where folks may try to wrestle us out of our point of view, or we must endure rather than stand up for ourselves. And that was the true thing. Like, how could you live with this for so long? And I'm used to living with things like that, like this person above me, and But it wasn't her complaining. She was just like, she was in that moment. She's drinking her champagne, and then she blurted everything out. And
oh, poor little thing, Penny.
And what little romantics like us like to think, even in our slouchiest day when we're not. Nobody wants baggage, right? When she just blurts out everything that she could possibly think of, and the other woman doesn't run screaming.
Yeah. The other person just sees this tender person that needs love and feels something for her. That I want to take care of this woman and protect her, which I think we all want. And I think in a relationship you do that for each other. You protect each other and you care for each other.
It's like, be kinder to yourself. Be kinder.
Yeah.
So that was a fantastic episode of Lizzie's Bedtime Stories. Especially since we had the little fairy tale action and you made me cry.
I know, me too. Oh, goodness.
Wow.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on again.
So welcome. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. And I really appreciate you doing this. It's just such a nice doorway for us writers who are locked away at our computers, getting to get out and, interact directly with people that love stories. So thank you.
You're welcome.